She just wanted a quiet Christmas. But in one single night, Claire lost everything to the man she trusted most. Betrayed. Broke. With a mother who's fading away. She thought nothing could get worse. Until she discovered his past held a secret that would change her life forever. That December morning, while the city decorated for Christmas, Claire received a message. Short. Urgent. Final. What happened next would destroy her. And save her in ways she never saw coming. Before we continue, where are you watching this from right now? And hit subscribe, it helps us bring more stories like this to you. The air in Silver Creek smelled like hope that December 20th morning. Multicolored lights flickered between the pines along Main Street, paper streamers danced on front porches, and the distant sound of a children's choir rehearsing Silent Night echoed like a promise of peace. It was in this scene of simple magic that Claire Donovan, 34, an elementary school teacher, walked with colorful shopping bags full of ingredients for Christmas dinner. Her brown eyes reflected the quiet joy of someone who finally believed she'd found stability after years of struggle. "Miss Claire. You want traditional panettone or chocolate?" shouted Mr. Arnold, owner of the North Star Bakery, pointing to stacks of shiny packages. "Too traditional, please." "Miles loves them," she replied, with a smile that lit up her face brighter than the Christmas lights surrounding them. Miles Carter. That name sounded like a safe melody in her mind. They'd met 13 months ago, when he moved to town to work in logistics for the agricultural co-op. A man with gentle manners, 37 years old, always wearing crisp shirts and offering practical solutions to everything. He was the one who helped Claire repair her leaking roof, who accompanied Eleanor, her 72-year-old mother with early-stage Alzheimer's, to medical appointments, who held her when she cried from exhaustion after hard days managing 30 kids in a classroom. While waiting for the panettones, Claire remembered last night's dinner. Miles had surprised her with a candlelit dinner in the small garden of her house, talking about future plans. "Next year we're going to Aspen, babe. You deserve to see the most beautiful Christmas in America." The promise echoed like a church bell in her heart. But her phone buzzed, interrupting the daydream. A message appeared on the screen. "Claire, I need to see you urgently. Something serious happened. I'm on my way to your place. Please don't tell your mom. Miles." Her blood seemed to freeze in her veins. Serious? Miles never used that word. Her fingers trembled as she typed a response, but the bakery bell rang, distracting her. As she left, she noticed that the clear blue sky from minutes before now carried heavy gray clouds. An omen. At home, Eleanor was watching the small Christmas tree in the corner of the living room, decorated with homemade ornaments that told the family's story, balls painted by Claire in childhood, straw stars made by her grandfather, a porcelain angel that had survived 3 generations. "Honey, Miles is coming over to talk to me," Claire announced, trying to disguise her trembling voice. "Now?" "But he brought those beautiful flowers for the nativity scene yesterday." The elderly woman frowned, her rare but precise threads of lucidity showing through the fog of her condition. When Miles arrived 20 minutes later, he looked like a ghost of the confident man Claire knew. His eyes were red and sunken, his hair disheveled as if he'd run nervous hands through it countless times, his shirt wrinkled and stained. Without greetings, without his usual warm hug, he grabbed her arm with almost painful force. "We need to talk outside." The warm late afternoon wind stirred the porch lights as they stepped into the garden. Miles began to speak, his voice hoarse and broken. "I invested everything in Roger's business, that friend I told you about, from the trucking company. It was supposed to be safe, Claire. A quick loan with high returns, guaranteed." He swallowed hard, avoiding her gaze. "But it was a scam. He took off with everyone's money. I lost everything." Claire felt her legs weaken. She leaned against the exposed brick wall as Miles continued, words pouring out in a desperate torrent. I'm going to lose the apartment. The payment's due on the 28th. I can't pay it. If I don't get $25,000 by Friday. He finally looked at her, tears streaming down his face. You have the savings your dad left you, right? I swear on his memory I'll pay you back in January. It's just a loan, Claire. Please. I'm begging you. The silence that followed was cut only by the song of sparrows on the power lines. Claire mentally traveled to the bank vault. Those $32,000 were her only safety net. Saved for her mother's emergencies, for the day the house needed urgent repairs, for her retirement, for the future she'd been carefully building brick by brick. Miles, that's all we have, she whispered, her voice almost disappearing into the wind. He fell to his knees, holding her hands desperately. I know. I know it's everything. But if I lose the roof over my head, I lose my job too. The company requires a permanent address. Claire, I love you. You're my only salvation. You're the only person I can trust. The word love echoed like a dangerous spell. She remembered the nights he'd massaged her aching feet after days in the classroom, the times he'd brought homemade soup when Eleanor had pneumonia, the way he'd decorated the whole house for her surprise birthday party, how he'd sat with her mother for hours, listening to her repeat the same stories over and over, never showing impatience. The exact moment the first raindrops began to fall, Claire spoke the words that would change her destiny forever. I'll help you. Miles hugged her tightly, sobbing with relief. He promised details, deadlines, guarantees. He promised he'd pay her back with interest. He promised this was temporary. He promised everything would be okay. But when he left, disappearing into the growing rain, Claire stood on the porch watching him go. A sharp sensation pierced her chest, thin and cold as the steel of a knife. Something whispered in the back of her mind, a small voice she chose to ignore. That night, while rain beat on the roof and Eleanor hummed old Christmas carols, half asleep on the couch, Claire sat at her kitchen table with her laptop open. Her hands shook as she navigated to her bank's website. She logged in, found the transfer option, and typed in Miles's account number. $32,000. She stared at the number for what felt like an eternity. Then she pressed confirm. The transaction went through instantly. When she refreshed the page, a notification from the banking app flashed. Current balance, $317.42. The emptiness in the account reflected in her soul. But she took a deep breath, looking at her father's photo on the shelf, a man who'd always believed in helping others, in second chances, in the power of love. It'll work out, Dad. He loves me. This is what you do for people you love. She closed the laptop and went to bed, her heart still racing but her mind somehow at peace. Little did she know that by dawn, she would discover that Miles Carter had never really existed at all. The morning of December 21st dawned gray and muggy, the kind of morning that feels like the sky itself is holding its breath. Claire woke with her heart racing, as if she'd spent the entire night running from something she couldn't name. Her phone lay beside the bed on the nightstand, screen dark. She picked it up with trembling fingers and tried calling Miles. The call went straight to voicemail, that generic automated voice saying his mailbox was full. She tried again. Nothing. A WhatsApp message she'd typed the night before sat unsent in her drafts. Good morning, love. Everything okay? She deleted it instead. Something inside her already knew the answer. She got out of bed, walking barefoot through the still sleeping house. Eleanor snored softly in the next room, covered by a thin sheet. Claire didn't want to wake her, not yet. Not until she understood what was happening. She made coffee alone, with automatic movements, while the phone remained silent in her trembling hands. At 8 a.m., she tried calling again. Phone off. At 9 a.m., she sent a message, "Miles, I'm worried. Please call me back." Nothing. At 10 a.m., panic began to take shape, not as a vague feeling, but as something solid, palpable, occupying physical space in her chest like a stone. Claire sat in the kitchen, watching the Christmas tree through the window. The lights blinked in their programmed rhythm, indifferent to the chaos exploding inside her. She tried to calm herself with logic. Maybe his phone battery died. Maybe he was dealing with bank issues. Maybe he'd gotten into an accident and was at the hospital. Maybe. But no maybe convinced her. Around 11 a.m., she grabbed her purse and left the house without telling her mother. She took a bus toward the neighborhood where Miles lived, a modest complex called Springwood Apartments, with 4-story buildings painted a fading white, with peeling trim and crooked window shutters. She knew the place well. She'd been there dozens of times, climbing the stairs with a light heart, hoping to find him at the door with that smile that made her forget all her worries, all her stress, all her fears. This time, her heart weighed like lead. The doorman, Mr. Antonio, a man in his 60s with a graying mustache and kind eyes that suddenly seemed sad, was sweeping the entrance. When he saw Claire, his expression changed, a brief flicker of discomfort crossed his weathered face, and he looked away quickly. "Good morning, Miss Claire," he said, avoiding direct eye contact. "Hi, Mr. Antonio." "Is Miles in?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady, though it wavered slightly. He stopped sweeping. Set the broom against the wall. Took a deep breath as if preparing to deliver bad news. "Miss Claire. Miles doesn't live here anymore." The world stopped spinning. "What do you mean he doesn't live here anymore?" Her voice came out as a whisper, barely audible above the sound of traffic on the street. "He turned in his keys last night around 10 p.m. Said he was moving. Left with 2 big suitcases and a backpack. Didn't say where. Just left." Claire felt her legs weaken. She leaned against the cold tile wall, her hand pressing against her chest as if she could hold her heart in place. Did he say where he was going?" "No, ma'am. Just asked me to let you know he was dealing with some personal issues and didn't know when he'd be in touch." Mr. Antonio's voice was gentle, apologetic, as if he somehow felt responsible for delivering this blow. The phrase echoed like a gong inside Claire's head. Personal issues. As if she weren't part of those issues. As if that $32,000 transfer didn't make her complicit in something she didn't understand. As if the money she'd given him, her father's legacy, was just collateral damage. "Mr. Antonio, are you sure? He didn't leave anything? No message? No forwarding address?" The doorman shook his head, embarrassed. "Nothing, ma'am. Just that." "I'm sorry." Claire left the complex like an automaton, her body moving on autopilot while her mind spiraled. Her feet carried her to a nearby park, where she sat on a worn wooden bench under the shade of an ancient oak tree. The heat was suffocating, but she felt cold, deep cold, the kind that comes from within, from the realization that everything you believed in was a carefully constructed illusion. She picked up her phone with shaking hands and typed Miles Carter into Google. Nothing relevant came up. She tried searching Facebook. His profile existed, but had been inactive for months. Old photos showed a smiling man on trips to national parks, at parties with friends, in moments that seemed genuine and warm. But now everything seemed like a lie. Claire called the number for the agricultural co-op where he claimed to work. A female voice answered on the second ring. "Good afternoon, Silver Creek Agricultural Co-op. How may I help you?" "Hi, I'd like to speak with Miles Carter, please. He works in logistics." There was a pause. She could hear the woman typing on a keyboard. "We don't have anyone by that name here." "Are you sure you have the right place?" The ground disappeared beneath Claire's feet. He works in logistics, he's been there for over a year." "We only have 2 people in logistics, Mr. Marcus and Ms. Fernanda." "No, Miles. And we've only had those 2 for the past 2 years. I'm the HR manager, I know everyone here." Claire hung up without responding. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. She tried calling Miles's number again. This time an automated message answered, "The number you are trying to reach does not exist or is no longer in service." In that instant, like lightning tearing through the sky, everything connected. The desperate request for money. The inexplicable urgency. The sudden disappearance. The job that didn't exist. The apartment he'd abandoned. The phone that was disconnected. Miles Carter, or whoever he really was, had vanished with her $32,000. Claire remained sitting on that bench for 3 hours. People passed around her, children played on the grass, street vendors shouted their products. The world kept turning, indifferent to the fact that her world had just collapsed into dust. When she finally returned home, it was almost 5 p.m. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that looked like blood spilled across heaven. Eleanor was on the porch, worried, her thin hands wringing together. "Honey, where were you? I got so scared." "I didn't know where you went," she said, her voice trembling with the confusion of her condition. Claire hugged her mother without saying anything. She couldn't speak. Couldn't explain. How could she tell her that she'd trusted a man who didn't exist? That she'd handed over her family's entire financial security to a ghost? That the money her father had left them, money meant to protect them, was now gone? That night, while the rain beat against the roof like angry fists and Eleanor hummed old Christmas carols, half asleep on the couch, Claire lay awake in the darkness. She stayed awake, revisiting every moment with Miles. Every kiss. Every promise. Every gesture of affection. Every time he'd held her close and whispered that he loved her. Was it all a lie? Or were there small fragments of truth woven into the lies, making it all feel so real? She thought about his hands, how they'd felt so warm, so real, so present. She thought about his voice, how it had soothed her after difficult days. She thought about the way he'd looked at Eleanor, with such genuine patience and kindness. Had any of that been real? Or was it all just an act, a performance, a carefully choreographed dance designed to lower her defenses? By morning, exhausted and hollow, Claire did something she'd never done before in her life. She reached out to the police. The police station in Silver Creek sat in a weathered brick building with faded yellow paint and a crooked wooden sign hanging above the entrance. The structure looked like it had been built in the 1970s and hadn't been updated since. Claire had never set foot inside, she'd never had reason to. Her life had always been orderly, predictable, safe. But now, clutching a folder containing bank statements and screenshots of conversations with Miles, she pushed through the glass door with her heart hammering against her ribs like a caged bird. A middle-aged police officer in a wrinkled uniform, holding a lukewarm cup of coffee that had clearly been sitting on his desk for hours, looked up at her with that tired expression people get when they work in a small town where not much happens. His name tag read Detective Marcello. "Good morning. What can I help you with?" he asked, gesturing to a worn plastic chair across from his desk. Claire sat down and told him everything. From the first time she met Miles at the farmer's market to his sudden disappearance. The money. The promises. The lies. The detective, who introduced himself as Detective Marcelo Rodriguez, listened with genuine attention, scribbling notes in a small leather notebook. His expression grew more serious with each detail. "Do you have a photo of him?" he asked when she finished, setting down his pen. Claire opened her phone with trembling fingers. There were dozens of photos, Miles smiling at the beach in Colorado, Miles at her house helping Eleanor with her garden, Miles hugging her mother on Mother's Day. She showed him several, watching his face as he studied each one carefully. The detective examined the images for several seconds, then slowly shook his head and leaned back in his chair. "Ms. Donovan, this is serious. You've been a victim of an elaborate scam. This type of crime is common in small towns, and it's becoming more prevalent nationwide. The perpetrator creates a false identity, gains your trust over an extended period, asks for money under the guise of an emergency, and then disappears completely." But he had documents. He had a driver's license. He had a social security number. He had everything. Claire protested, her voice rising slightly. He even had a job reference. Fake documents are extremely easy to obtain these days. The detective took a deep breath and leaned forward, his elbows on the desk. "I'm going to file a report, but I need to be honest with you, recovering that money is extremely difficult. These scammers are professionals. They've done this before. Multiple times. He's probably already in another city, using another identity, running the same con on another woman." The last sentence hit Claire like a punch to the gut. Another woman. How many other women had he deceived? How many other families had he destroyed? How many other people had trusted him with their life savings? She felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she forced them back. "What do I do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do I do now?" Detective Rodriguez stood up and walked over to a filing cabinet, pulling out a thick folder. "First, we file an official report. Second, we contact the bank to see if there's any way to trace the transfer or reverse it, though I'll be honest, that's unlikely. Third, we check if there are other victims. Sometimes these guys operate in patterns. If we can connect multiple cases, it strengthens our investigation." For the next 2 hours, Claire answered questions. Where did she meet him? How long had they been dating? Had he ever asked for money before? Did he have any friends or associates she knew about? Had he mentioned family? Where was he from originally? With each question, Claire realized how little she actually knew about Miles Carter. She'd been so caught up in the feeling of being loved, of finally having someone to share her burden with, that she'd never asked the right questions. She'd never dug deeper. She'd accepted his stories at face value because they fit the narrative she wanted to believe. By the time she left the station, it was nearly 2 p.m. Detective Rodriguez had given her a case number and a folder with information about victim support services. His final words echoed in her mind, "We'll do what we can, but these cases are difficult. The perpetrator is likely long gone by now." Claire walked through the streets of Silver Creek in a daze. Everything looked different now. The Christmas lights that had seemed magical before now felt like mockery. The people on the streets, doing their holiday shopping, seemed like characters in a movie she could no longer follow. A couple holding hands made her chest ache. A man helping an elderly woman carry shopping bags made her think of Miles and Eleanor. She stopped at a coffee shop and sat by the window, watching people pass by. A woman about her age sat across from her, laughing with friends, completely carefree. Claire wondered if that woman had any idea how quickly everything could fall apart. How one person could destroy your entire world in a matter of weeks. When she arrived home around 3 p.m., Eleanor was in the kitchen, trying to prepare a cake. Her movements were slow, confused, uncertain. She'd forgotten the ingredients on the counter and was searching for them again, opening the same cabinet multiple times. "Honey," Claire whispered, hugging her from behind, breathing in the familiar scent of her mother's lavender soap. "Sweetheart? What happened? You look pale. Are you sick?" Her mother responded, with that tone of concern that cut through even her foggy days, that maternal instinct that persisted even as her memory faded. Claire couldn't tell her. Couldn't explain that she'd lost everything. That she'd been deceived by someone she loved. That now she couldn't pay next month's bills. That the house might be at risk. That she didn't know how they would survive the winter. "Nothing, Mom. I'm just tired. Long day at school." Eleanor nodded, accepting the explanation, and returned to her cake, which would likely never be finished. That night, while Eleanor slept softly in the next room, her breathing shallow and peaceful, Claire opened her old laptop and started researching. She typed Miles Carter scammer into Google. Nothing relevant came up. She tried searching on Facebook. His profile existed, but had been inactive for months. Old photos showed a smiling man on vacations to national parks, at parties with friends, in moments that seemed genuine and warm. But now everything felt like a lie. She searched for variations: Miles Walker, Miles Cole, Miles Anderson. Nothing. She tried reverse image searching his photos. Several came up on dating sites, but with different names. Michael Torres. Marcus Williams. Matthew Davis. Claire's stomach twisted. The same face. Different names. Different profiles. How many identities did this man have? She called the number of the agricultural cooperative where Miles claimed to work. A female voice answered on the second ring. "Good afternoon, Silver Creek Agricultural Cooperative. How can I help you?" "Hi, I'd like to speak with Miles Carter, please. He works in logistics." There was a pause. She could hear the woman typing on a keyboard. "We don't have anyone by that name here." "Are you sure you have the right place?" Claire felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. He works in logistics. He's been there for over a year. We only have 2 people in logistics, Mr. Marcus and Ms. Fernanda. No Miles. And we've only had those 2 for the past 2 years. I'm the HR manager, I know everyone here personally. There's no Miles Carter. Claire hung up without responding. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. She tried calling Miles's number again. This time an automated message answered: "The number you are trying to reach does not exist or is no longer in service." In that instant, like lightning splitting the sky, everything connected. The desperate request for money. The inexplicable urgency. The sudden disappearance. The job that didn't exist. The apartment he'd abandoned. The phone that was disconnected. The multiple identities. Miles Carter, or whoever he really was, had vanished with her $32,000, leaving behind nothing but questions and pain. Claire closed the laptop and sat in darkness, listening to the sound of rain against the windows. Outside, the Christmas lights on the houses flickered weakly, as if even they had lost their hope. She thought about calling someone, Rose Turner, her best friend and neighbor. But what would she say? How could she explain her own stupidity? How could she admit that she'd given away her entire life savings to a man who didn't exist? Instead, she sat alone in the dark, feeling the weight of her mistakes pressing down on her like a physical force, wondering how she would survive the coming weeks, wondering if she would ever be able to trust anyone again. The days leading up to Christmas felt heavier than the winter air settling over Silver Creek. The lights downtown blinked cheerfully, carolers rehearsed on street corners, and children ran through the crisp air with bright scarves trailing behind them. But inside Claire Donovan's home, everything felt muted, as if someone had placed a glass dome over her world, trapping her grief inside. Claire woke early on December 22nd, long before the sun softened the horizon with its pale winter glow. She hadn't slept. Her pillow was damp, and her eyes stung from the weight of tears she'd refused to shed in front of her mother. She walked into the kitchen, prepared a pot of coffee, and stared at her phone again, screen dark, silent, indifferent. Nothing from Miles. Not a message. Not a call. Not a single trace of the man she thought she would marry. The man who had stolen everything. Eleanor shuffled into the kitchen wearing her fuzzy blue slippers, her gray hair messy from sleep. "Good morning, honey," she said softly. "You're up early." Claire forced a smile she didn't feel. "Couldn't sleep." Eleanor studied her daughter's face with surprising clarity, one of those rare flashes when her mind sharpened instead of blurring. "You've been crying," she murmured. "Did something happen?" Claire swallowed hard. How could she tell her mother that the money her father had worked for his entire life, money meant for medical emergencies, home repairs, and Claire's future, was gone? How could she tell her that she'd been conned? That she'd been naive? That she'd given their entire safety net to a man she didn't truly know? She couldn't. Not yet. "Just tired," Claire repeated. "School stuff." Eleanor nodded slowly, seeming to accept the explanation. She turned her attention to the small Christmas tree in the living room, decorated with handmade ornaments Claire had created as a child. Paper snowflakes. Felt stars. Glittered pine cones. Memories frozen in time, untouched by betrayal. "It's almost Christmas," Eleanor said with a smile. "Your father always said Christmas brings miracles." Claire's throat tightened. "I know, Mom." She didn't believe in miracles. Not anymore. Later that morning, Claire walked to the grocery store, clutching the list she'd written days ago, back when she thought she'd be preparing Christmas dinner with Miles. He'd promised to spend Christmas Eve with her, with Eleanor, with the small family he claimed to love. Now, even thinking his name made her chest ache. Inside the store, the holiday chaos was in full swing. People rushed through aisles, carts overflowing with hams, turkeys, pies, and last-minute gifts. Christmas music played loudly from the speakers, melodies that once warmed Claire's heart but now scraped against her nerves. She grabbed what she could afford. Rice, beans, bread, eggs, a small box of cocoa mix. No fancy dinner. No Christmas feast. Her bank account balance glared back at her in cold numbers. $317.42. She swallowed as she clicked her phone screen off. That number haunted her every second. At the checkout line, Rose Turner appeared behind her, her neighbor, friend, and self-proclaimed community gossip in the most affectionate way. Rose was in her late 40s, with curly chestnut hair and eyes that noticed everything. "Claire. Hey, hun, are you okay? You look pale." Claire hesitated. Rose tilted her head. "What's going on?" Claire shook her head. "Nothing. Just holiday stress." Rose narrowed her eyes. "MHM. And I'm Santa Claus." Claire opened her mouth to respond, but her voice broke. Rose gently grabbed her arm. "Sweetheart, what happened?" For a moment, Claire considered telling her everything. The scam. The money. The lies. The shame. The fear of losing her home. But Rose was loud, emotional, and Claire feared the pity more than anything. "Rose. I can't talk about it right now." And to her surprise, Rose simply nodded. Okay. When you're ready, I'm here. By the time Claire returned home, Eleanor was sitting on the porch, humming an old Christmas song her husband used to play every December. The melody tugged painfully at Claire's memories, her father carving ornaments out of wood, her mother baking cinnamon rolls, the house warm and safe. Back when Christmas meant something. Did you get everything? Eleanor asked. Enough. Claire carried the groceries inside. She tried to focus on chores, cleaning the house, organizing the kitchen, fixing the string of lights that kept falling off the top window, but everything felt overwhelming. Every sound seemed louder. Every moment heavier. That afternoon, she received a call. Unknown number. Her stomach twisted, hope flaring before she could extinguish it. She answered. Ms. Donovan? Detective Marcello's voice. Yes? We reviewed your report. I need you to come to the station again. We found something. Claire's hands went cold. Something, about Miles? Yes. Her pulse thundered. Is he arrested? No, the detective said, tone grim, but we identified patterns that match your case. It seems this man didn't just scam you. There are others. Claire's breath hitched. Others. Other women. Other lives destroyed. The detective continued. I need you to come in tomorrow morning. We uncovered another identity he used. And, Ms. Donovan, we're worried he might be part of something bigger. Claire's knees almost gave out. Bigger? How much bigger? There may be a network behind him. A group working across several cities. Claire felt her world tilt, the air in the room seemed to vanish. Miles wasn't just a liar. Not just a thief. Not just a con artist. He might be part of a criminal ring. A professional. Someone who'd done this before. Someone who would do it again. She hung up and sank into the nearest chair, staring at the flickering Christmas tree lights. For the first time since Miles disappeared, fear wasn't the dominant emotion. It was anger. Burning, rising, consuming. She'd trusted him. Loved him. Believed in him. And he had ripped her life apart. But she would not be silent. She would not hide. She would not crumble. This was her life, her home, her mother's future. And she would fight. With everything she had left. That night, while Eleanor slept peacefully and snow began to fall outside, light, hesitant flakes swirling through the cold air, Claire sat by the window with a blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders. For the first time since the nightmare began, she made a promise to herself. I will rebuild my life. No matter how long it took. No matter how much it hurt. No matter what truth she had to face about the man she thought she knew. Christmas was coming. And with it, for the first time in weeks, a faint, fragile spark of hope. The police station felt colder on December 23rd, as if the building itself had absorbed all the darkness of the cases passing through its doors. Claire sat across from Detective Marcello in a small interrogation room, not because she was a suspect, but because the information he had to share required privacy. On the metal table between them lay a manila folder. Inside were photographs. Mugshots. Identity documents. And a pattern that made Claire's blood run cold. This is Marcus Williams, Detective Marcello said, pointing to a photo. He operated in Denver 3 years ago. Scammed 4 women, stole approximately $89,000. He flipped to the next photo. This is Michael Torres. Worked in Boulder 2 years ago. 8 victims. $156,000 stolen. Another flip. Matthew Davis. Lakewood, 18 months ago. 12 victims. $203,000. Detective Marcello leaned back in his chair, his expression grave. "And this," he said, pointing to a photo that made Claire's stomach drop, "is the man you knew as Miles Carter." It was him. The same face. The same eyes. But in this photo, he looked harder. Colder. Like a stranger wearing the skin of someone she loved. "His real name is Adrian Cole," the detective continued. "He's 42 years old, originally from Nevada. He's been running this con for at least 7 years across multiple states. We've identified 34 confirmed victims. Possibly more." Claire's hands trembled. 34? 34 that we know of. The actual number could be higher. Many victims don't report because of shame, or because they're afraid of legal consequences if they transferred money illegally. Detective Marcello opened another folder, this one containing printed emails and text messages. "We've been coordinating with law enforcement in other states. What we've discovered is that Adrian Cole doesn't work alone. There's a network behind him. People who create fake documents, set up false employment records, manage the money transfers. It's sophisticated. Professional." Claire felt sick. So he was never just a man who fell into a scam? No. He's a predator. A professional con artist. And based on the pattern, he specifically targets single women with stable jobs and family obligations, women who are vulnerable but not desperate enough to ask too many questions. The words hit like bullets. Claire realized she fit the profile perfectly. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "We've issued a warrant for his arrest. We're working with federal authorities. But I need to be honest with you, these cases are difficult to prosecute. By the time we catch him, the money is usually gone. Laundered through multiple accounts, transferred to shell companies, moved across borders." Claire felt tears burning behind her eyes. "So I won't get my money back?" Detective Marcello's silence was answer enough. "I'm sorry, Ms. Donovan. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear." Claire left the police station in a daze. The world outside seemed surreal, people shopping, laughing, celebrating the approaching holiday. How could they be so happy when her life was falling apart? She walked without direction, ending up at Lakewood Springs Park, a place where she and Miles had spent countless afternoons. They'd walked by the frozen pond, held hands on the wooden bridge, talked about dreams and futures that were never real. She sat on a bench, watching the water, and allowed herself to cry. Not the quiet tears of the past days, but deep, wrenching sobs that came from the core of her being. She cried for the woman she'd been, trusting, hopeful, naive. She cried for the money that was gone. She cried for her mother, who would never know the full extent of what had happened. She cried for the other 33 women who'd been victimized by the same man. And she cried for the future she'd imagined, a future that had never existed except in her own mind. By the time the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Claire had cried herself empty. She sat in silence, listening to the sound of the wind through the bare trees, feeling the cold seep into her bones. Her phone buzzed. A text from Rose Turner. "Hey hun, haven't seen you in days. Everything okay? Want to grab coffee?" Claire stared at the message for a long time before responding, "Can't today. But thank you for checking on me." She knew she couldn't hide forever. Eventually, she would have to tell someone. Eventually, the truth would come out. But not yet. Not while the wound was still so fresh, still bleeding. Christmas Eve arrived with a heavy silence. Eleanor had spent the day in a fog, her lucidity fading and returning unpredictably. Sometimes she recognized Claire. Sometimes she called her by her sister's name. Sometimes she seemed to be living in the past, asking for Claire's father, dead for 5 years. Claire prepared a simple dinner, roasted chicken, rice, steamed vegetables. Nothing fancy. Nothing like the feast she'd imagined when Miles was still in her life. They ate together in the small dining room, the Christmas tree blinking softly in the corner. Eleanor hummed an old carol, and Claire tried to smile, tried to pretend that everything was normal, that her world hadn't shattered into 1,000 pieces. "This is nice," Eleanor said, patting Claire's hand. "Just the two of us." Claire squeezed her mother's hand gently. "Yes, Mom. Just us." After dinner, they sat by the tree. Eleanor fell asleep on the couch, her head tilted back, her breathing soft and even. Claire watched her mother sleep, thinking about how fragile life was. How quickly everything could change. How the people we trust most could destroy us. She thought about Miles, or Adrian, or whatever his real name was. She wondered if he was celebrating Christmas somewhere. If he felt any remorse. If he ever thought about the lives he'd destroyed. Probably not. People like him didn't feel remorse. They felt only the thrill of the con, the satisfaction of manipulation, the rush of power that came from making someone believe a lie. Around midnight, Claire stepped outside onto the porch. The night was clear and cold, stars scattered across the black sky like diamonds. Snow had begun to fall again, light and delicate, covering the world in white. It was beautiful. And terrible. Because beauty and pain were often intertwined, you couldn't have one without the other. Claire wrapped her arms around herself and made a silent promise. "I will survive this. I will rebuild. I will not let this destroy me." It wasn't a prayer. She wasn't sure she believed in God anymore, not after this. But it was a vow. A commitment to herself. A declaration of war against the despair that threatened to consume her. Inside the house, Eleanor slept peacefully, unaware of the storm raging in her daughter's heart. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the world in a blanket of white, pure, untouched, hopeful. And for the first time since Miles disappeared, Claire felt something shift inside her. Not hope, exactly. But the possibility of hope. The faintest glimmer of light in the darkness. A whisper that said, "This is not the end. This is the beginning." Christmas morning arrived gray and cold, the kind of morning that feels like the world is holding its breath. Claire woke with a heaviness in her chest that hadn't lifted in days. Eleanor was already awake, sitting in the living room with a cup of tea, staring at the Christmas tree as if it held answers to questions she couldn't quite remember asking. "Merry Christmas, Mom," Claire said softly, kissing the top of her mother's head. Eleanor smiled, one of those genuine smiles that broke through the fog of her condition. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart." They opened the few gifts they'd purchased for each other weeks ago, before everything fell apart. Eleanor gave Clara a scarf she'd knitted months earlier, before her hands became too unsteady. Claire gave her mother a photo album filled with pictures of their family, her father, Eleanor as a young woman, Claire as a child. Memories frozen in time. They didn't exchange much. Money was too tight. But the gifts felt meaningful in a way expensive presents never could. By midday, Claire was preparing a simple Christmas dinner when her phone rang. Unknown number. Her stomach twisted. For a moment, she thought it might be Miles, Adrian, calling to explain, to apologize, to somehow make this right. She answered. "Ms. Donovan?" A woman's voice, professional and warm. "Yes?" "This is Principal Beatrice Hayes from Silver Creek Elementary. I hope I'm not interrupting your Christmas." Claire's confusion must have been audible, because the principal continued. "I wanted to reach out personally. I've been hearing some concerning things from staff members about your situation. About a personal matter you've been dealing with." Claire's face flushed. Had Rose told people? Had word gotten around the school? Yes, there's been a situation," Claire admitted carefully. "I won't pry into details," Principal Hayes said gently, "but I want you to know that our school community cares about you. We've set up an emergency assistance fund. It's not much, but it might help you get through the next few months. Claire felt tears prick her eyes. I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept it. You're one of our best teachers. You care about those children. And this community cares about you. After hanging up, Claire sat in stunned silence. She'd been so consumed by shame, so convinced that she was alone in this, that she hadn't realized people were watching out for her. People cared. It was a small thing, but it felt like a lifeline. That evening, as snow began to fall again and the world outside turned white and silent, there was a knock on the door. Claire opened it to find Rose Turner standing on the porch, holding a casserole dish and wearing an expression that said she would not be turned away. "Don't even try to tell me you're busy," Rose said, pushing past Claire into the warm house. "I'm staying for dinner, and we're going to talk." Eleanor appeared from the living room, delighted to see Rose, who'd always been kind to her. "Rose. Come in, come in. We're just about to eat." While Eleanor set the table, Rose pulled Claire into the kitchen. "Okay, spill it," Rose said, setting the casserole on the counter. "And don't give me that I'm fine nonsense. I've known you for 8 years. I know when something's wrong." Claire's resolve crumbled. She told Rose everything. The money. The lies. The scam. The police. Adrian Cole. The 34 other victims. All of it. Rose listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from concern to anger to heartbreak. When Claire finished, Rose pulled her into a tight hug. "Oh, honey. Oh my God. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I was ashamed," Claire whispered. "Because I felt stupid. Because I didn't want pity." "This isn't about pity," Rose said firmly. "This is about community. This is about people who care about you showing up. You're not stupid, Claire. You're human. You trusted someone. That's not a character flaw, that's a strength. He exploited that strength, but that doesn't make you weak." They sat at the dinner table with Eleanor, who seemed to have one of her clear days. She listened to Rose's stories about the neighborhood, laughed at her jokes, and seemed genuinely happy. For a few hours, the weight lifted slightly. After dinner, Rose helped Claire clean up while Eleanor watched a Christmas movie in the living room. "I talked to some people," Rose said quietly. "Teachers at the school. We're organizing a collection. Nothing huge, but enough to help you get through January and February." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "Rose, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I'm choosing to. That's what friends do." After Rose left, Claire sat on the porch in the cold night air, watching the snow fall. The world was quiet, peaceful, untouched by the chaos inside her. She thought about Adrian Cole, wherever he was, whatever he was doing. She wondered if he ever thought about the lives he'd destroyed. If he felt any remorse. If he understood the weight of what he'd done. Probably not. People like him existed in a different moral universe. They saw other people as objects, as means to an end, as targets rather than human beings with hopes and dreams and families who depended on them. But Claire was beginning to understand something important. She couldn't control what Adrian Cole did or felt. She could only control how she responded. And she was choosing to survive. She was choosing to rebuild. She was choosing to believe that this wasn't the end of her story, it was just a dark chapter in a much longer narrative. Inside the house, Eleanor hummed a Christmas carol. The tree lights blinked softly. The world continued turning, indifferent to individual tragedies, but also indifferent to individual strength. And Claire Donovan, sitting alone in the snow, made a decision. Tomorrow, I start fighting back. Not with anger or revenge. But with determination. With resilience. With the quiet strength of someone who refuses to be broken. The snow continued to fall, covering everything in white, a fresh start, a blank page, a promise of renewal. And for the first time since Adrian disappeared, Claire felt something shift inside her. Not just the possibility of hope, but the beginning of actual hope. Real, tangible, fragile hope. It was enough. For now, it was enough. The days after Christmas weighed heavily over Silver Creek, as though the entire town were wrapped in a fog of cold and quiet. Snow covered the sidewalks in thin layers, melting slowly under the weak winter sun. Inside her home, Claire tried to create a routine again. She cooked simple meals, cleaned the house room by room, helped Eleanor with her daily care, and went over her bills repeatedly, but every task felt heavier than the last. Sleep no longer came easily. When it did, it brought dreams that were more like broken memories, Miles smiling at her from across a dinner table, his hand brushing her cheek, his promises echoing in her mind like ghosts. The worst part wasn't the money. It was the betrayal. It was realizing she had loved someone who didn't exist. But life kept moving, indifferent to her heartbreak. By December 28th, Claire had managed to settle into a fragile rhythm, though each day felt like she was walking through wet cement. The town was slowly waking from the festivities, decorations remained, but the magic had already faded. That morning, around 9:14 a.m., her phone rang. Unknown number. Her stomach clenched. Every muscle tensed. She answered. Ms. Donovan? Detective Marcello's voice. Yes, I'm here, Claire said, her heart now pounding. We have an update on your case. I need to speak with you. Her breath caught. What did you find? The pause on the other end was not long, but long enough to drain all warmth from her body. Ms. Donovan, the man you knew as Miles Carter is officially connected to 8 confirmed victims across 3 states. But we believe the number could be higher. 8. 8 lives shattered like hers. Claire gripped the edge of the countertop to stay upright. 8 victims, she whispered. Confirmed, the detective continued. All women. Different backgrounds, different cities. But the pattern is the same persona, same method, same emotional manipulation. Claire closed her eyes. It felt like the floor disappeared beneath her. But the detective wasn't finished. There's something else, he said, voice lowering. One of the victims, a woman named Sophia Reynolds, was reported missing by her family 3 days ago. Claire's eyes flew open. Missing? Missing how? Her sister says she packed a bag to meet him. She hasn't been heard from since. A wave of nausea rolled through Claire. Do you think he did something to her? We don't know, Detective Marcello answered honestly. We can't confirm foul play. But we're taking it seriously. This is no longer just fraud, it may be something far more dangerous. Claire pressed a hand to her chest, trying to breathe evenly. Detective, what are you saying? I'm saying your case is now part of a larger investigation involving federal authorities. And we need to confirm whether Miles, or Adrian, has ties to organized criminal activity. Claire felt the room spin. Organized crime? Miles? The man who cooked her dinner and decorated her house with Christmas lights? The detective cleared his throat. I'm sending you a photo, he said. It was taken from a security camera last week in Colorado Springs. Look closely. A notification flashed on her phone. Claire opened the image. Her blood turned to ice. It was him, but not him. Not the man she'd loved. This version of him looked harder, colder, more dangerous. A faint scar on his cheek, one she'd never seen before, cut across his expression, giving him a violent edge. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't gentle. He wasn't the Miles she'd known. This was Adrian Cole in his true form, a predator wearing a human face. Do you recognize him? Detective Marcello asked quietly. It's him, Claire whispered. But it's not. It's like looking at a completely different person. That's exactly what he is, the detective said. Adrian Cole is a master of reinvention. He becomes whoever his victims need him to be. But underneath all those personas is someone capable of things we're still investigating. Claire felt her legs weaken. She pulled out a kitchen chair and sat down heavily. The missing woman. Sophia Reynolds, do you think he hurt her? We're exploring all possibilities. Her family said she was vulnerable, recently divorced, financially struggling, emotionally fragile. Classic profile for his victims. Claire thought about Sophia Reynolds, a woman she'd never met but whose life had intersected with hers through a shared predator. What do I do? Claire asked, her voice small. For now, nothing. Just be aware. If Adrian tries to contact you, through any method, any number, any account, document everything and call me immediately. Don't respond. Don't engage. Just document and report. After hanging up, Claire sat in silence for a long time. The photo of Adrian Cole stared back at her from her phone screen, that scarred, cold face. She wondered how many times she'd kissed that face. How many times she'd trusted those eyes. How many times she'd believed the lies coming from that mouth. Eleanor appeared in the kitchen doorway, confused. Honey? Are you okay? You look pale. Claire quickly closed her phone and forced a smile. I'm fine, Mom. Just a work call. But she wasn't fine. She was terrified. Not just for herself, but for Sophia Reynolds. For the other 7 victims. For the women Adrian Cole would target next if he wasn't stopped. That evening, while Eleanor watched television in the living room, Claire opened her laptop and began researching. She typed Adrian Cole missing woman Colorado Springs into Google. Several news articles appeared. Woman missing after meeting online acquaintance. Police search for missing Colorado woman. Family pleads for information on Sophia Reynolds. Claire clicked on the first article. A photo of Sophia Reynolds appeared, a woman in her late 30s with kind eyes and a gentle smile. She looked like someone who'd experienced heartbreak. Someone vulnerable. Someone exactly like Claire. The article stated that Sophia had met a man named Michael Torres online. They'd been dating for 4 months. He'd asked for money, $18,000, claiming it was for a business emergency. She'd given it to him. Then he disappeared. When she tried to find him, she discovered the deception. But instead of reporting it, she'd packed a bag and told her sister she was meeting him to talk things through. That was 3 days ago. She hadn't been heard from since. Claire's hands trembled as she read. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about a man who was escalating. A man who'd moved from simple financial fraud to something darker. A man who might be dangerous in ways Claire hadn't imagined. She thought about calling Detective Marcello again, but what would she say? She had no new information. She couldn't help find Sophia Reynolds. All she could do was wait. And pray that Sophia was safe. And pray that Adrian Cole would be caught before he hurt anyone else. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around her. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. The radiator clanked and hissed. The house made its familiar nighttime sounds, but tonight, every noise felt ominous. She thought about the scar on Adrian's face in that photo. Where had it come from? How had he gotten it? Was it from a fight? From violence? From something dark in his past that she'd never known about? She thought about all the things she didn't know about him. His real family. His real childhood. His real motivations. His real capacity for harm. She'd loved a phantom. A carefully constructed illusion. And now that illusion had shattered, revealing something terrifying underneath. Around 3 a.m., Claire got out of bed and went to the kitchen. She made tea and sat by the window, watching the snow fall in the darkness. The world outside was silent, peaceful, untouched by the chaos inside her mind. She thought about Sophia Reynolds. She wondered if Sophia was safe. She wondered if she was scared. She wondered if she, too, had loved Adrian Cole and was now discovering the truth about who he really was. By dawn, Claire had made a decision. She would not be a passive victim. She would not wait for Detective Marcello to solve this. She would not hide. Instead, she would do something she'd never done before. She would fight back. The morning of December 30th was cold enough to sting Claire's skin. Silver Creek sat under a pale winter sun, its snowy rooftops glowing faintly as if holding on to the last remnants of Christmas. She hadn't slept much, the weight of the photo, the missing woman, and the truth about Adrian Cole pressed on her chest like a stone. Then, at 9:03 a.m., her phone vibrated. A message. From an unknown number. Claire, it's me. I need to see you. It's urgent. Her breath froze in her lungs. It was him. Adrian. Miles. Whoever he was. Her fingers shook as she read the message again. For a moment, the world around her blurred, the kitchen, the sunlight, the slow hum of Eleanor watching TV in the living room. Everything faded except those words. I need to see you. Fear and anger warred inside her. Part of her wanted to throw the phone away. Another part, the part still searching for answers, wanted to confront him. She took a shaky breath and typed. Where? The reply came instantly. Blue Pine Lodge. Room 104. Come alone. Blue Pine Lodge. An old, half-abandoned inn on the outskirts of Lakewood Springs. A place where people went to disappear, and where no one asked questions. Claire's stomach twisted. Every instinct screamed danger. Before she could even think of answering, a voice behind her said. Who's texting you? It was Miles. No, not Miles. It was Miles's voice in her memory. She turned around to find Eleanor watching her with confusion. Honey? Are you okay? Her mother asked gently. Claire forced a smile. I'm fine, Mom. Just, school stuff. But she wasn't fine. She needed help. And there was only one person she trusted with the truth now. She drove straight to Rose Turner's house. Snow crunched under her boots as she hurried up the walkway. Rose opened the door before Claire even knocked. Hun, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost. Claire pushed inside and shut the door behind her. He texted me, Claire whispered. Adrian. Or Miles. Whatever his name is. He wants to meet. Rose's eyes widened. Absolutely not. No. No way. This man is dangerous. I know, Claire said, voice breaking. But what if he knows something about the missing woman? What if she's alive? What if he wants to confess? Rose crossed her arms. And what if he wants to silence you? What if he knows the police are closing in and he thinks you're a threat? Claire's throat tightened. I won't go alone. Rose exhaled sharply. Good. Because I'm coming with you. Claire shook her head. No. You can't. But someone has to be nearby. Watching. Please. After a moment of hesitation, Rose nodded. Okay. But you're not walking into that room without protection. And you're telling Detective Marcello. The detective answered on the first ring. You're not going alone, he said immediately. I know. But I need to go. He reached out. This could be our only chance to find Sophia Reynolds. There was silence on the other end, then a resigned sigh. I'll send a unit. Stay outside. Do not enter until my officers arrive. Do you understand? Yes. But deep down, Claire already knew she wasn't going to wait. She needed answers. For herself. For Sophia. For every woman he'd fooled. Blue Pine Lodge sat 20 minutes outside town, nestled between tall pine trees weighed down by snow. Its old wooden sign creaked in the wind. The building itself was worn, peeling paint, cracked windows, rusted gutters. A place where stories went to die. Claire and Rose parked at a distance behind a line of trees. Stay in the car, Claire said. Rose grabbed her wrist. Claire, please. Don't do this. But Claire gently pulled her hand away. I have to. I need to hear it from him. She stepped out of the car, her boots crunching in the snow. Her heart hammered as she crossed the icy parking lot. The lodge lobby was dimly lit, smelling faintly of mildew and cigarettes. The receptionist, a thin man with hollow eyes, looked up from an old TV. Room 104, she asked softly. He nodded without asking questions. Of course. Places like this never did. The hallway felt endless, each step echoing off the wooden walls. Her breath fogged in front of her. Room 104 was at the far end, its door slightly ajar. Her pulse thundered. She pushed the door open. The smell hit her first, stale air, dust, and something metallic. Then she saw him. Adrian, or Miles, stood near the window, back turned to her. He looked thinner, disheveled, wearing the same face she'd loved but with a hardness she'd never seen before. He turned slowly. And there he was. The man she had loved. The man who had broken her. The man who wasn't even real. Claire, he said, voice cracked, almost desperate. Thank you for coming. She swallowed hard. What do you want? He ran a shaky hand through his hair. I'm in trouble. Serious trouble. I didn't scam you. I mean, I did, but I didn't want to. Not you. You were different. Claire clenched her jaw. Don't lie to me. I'm not lying, he said, stepping closer. I didn't fall in love with the others. But with you. I messed up. I wanted to stop. I wanted to be someone real. Her hands curled into fists. Then where's Sophia Reynolds? Adrian froze. His breath caught. I don't know. Were you involved in her disappearance? No. Claire, listen to me. Do not take another step. She backed away. You lied about everything. Your name. Your life. Your job. Your past. You disappeared with my money. And now a woman is missing. She looked him straight in the eyes. And you expect me to believe you? His voice broke. I never wanted you to get hurt. But you did hurt me, Claire whispered. And you hurt all those other women. Adrian's eyes filled with something like regret. Or maybe fear. I can help you, he said. I know where the others from the network are. I know where the money goes. But I need protection. The people I worked with, if they find me, I'm dead. Before Claire could respond, a sound echoed outside the window. Car doors. Voices. Footsteps crunching in the snow. Police. Adrian backed away, panicked. No, Claire, you didn't. I had to, she said quietly. You're dangerous. His expression twisted. Hurt. Fear. Rage. You shouldn't have come here. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Why? Because now they'll think you know too much. Before she could ask who they were, a gunshot cracked through the air. The sound was deafening, not like in movies, but raw, violent, real. The window behind Adrian shattered into 1,000 glittering pieces. He stumbled backward, his face going white. "Get down!" Claire screamed, diving behind the bed. Adrian threw himself against the wall, his hands raised. "No, no, please," he shouted toward the window. "I'm cooperating. I'm cooperating." Another gunshot. This one came through the door. Claire's entire body trembled. This wasn't police. This was something else. Something darker. "They found me," Adrian gasped, his voice breaking. "Oh God, they found me." The door burst open. 2 men in dark jackets stood in the doorway, guns raised. They weren't police. Their expressions were cold, professional, lethal. Claire pressed herself against the wall, barely breathing. One of the men pointed his gun at Adrian. "You were supposed to disappear," the man said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Instead, you're here, talking to the cops." I didn't," Adrian started, but the man cut him off. "Shut up." The second man's eyes swept the room and landed on Claire. His expression changed. "We have a witness," he said to his partner. Claire's blood turned to ice. "No," Adrian said suddenly, stepping forward. "She's not involved. She doesn't know anything." "She knows you," the first man said flatly. "That makes her involved." The sound of sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The 2 men exchanged a look. "We need to move," the second man said. But before they could, a voice boomed from the hallway. "Police! Drop your weapons!" Detective Marcello appeared in the doorway, gun drawn, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. The 2 men spun around, their guns raised toward the detective. For a moment, everything froze. Time seemed to stop. Then chaos erupted. Gunfire exploded through the small room. Claire screamed, covering her head. She heard Adrian cry out. She heard the deafening roar of weapons. She heard Detective Marcello shouting orders. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. Silence. Ringing silence. Claire slowly lifted her head. One of the men lay on the floor, bleeding. The other was being tackled by police officers. Adrian was pressed against the wall, his hands over his head, tears streaming down his face. Detective Marcello rushed to Claire. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, his gun still raised. "No," she whispered. "No, I'm okay." "Get her out of here," he ordered one of the officers. As they led her out of the room, Claire caught one last glimpse of Adrian. He looked broken. Terrified. Like a man who'd finally realized the consequences of his choices. Outside, the world was chaos. Police cars surrounded the lodge, their lights flashing red and blue against the white snow. Paramedics rushed past with equipment. Officers cordoned off the area with yellow tape. Rose ran toward Claire, tears streaming down her face. "Oh my God, Claire! Are you okay?" "I heard gunshots and I called 911 and..." Claire collapsed into her friend's arms, shaking violently. "It's okay," Rose whispered, holding her tight. "It's over. It's over." But Claire wasn't sure if it was over. Detective Marcello emerged from the lodge, his expression grim. He walked straight to Claire. "We need to get a statement from you," he said. "But first, let's get you somewhere safe." At the police station, in a small warm room with a cup of hot chocolate she couldn't drink, Claire told Detective Marcello everything that had happened. The text message. The meeting. Adrian's confession. The gunshots. The men. The detective listened carefully, taking notes. those two men were part of the network, he explained when she finished. They were sent to eliminate Adrian before he could testify. He was becoming a liability. Claire felt sick. So he was going to be killed? Yes. And now that you've witnessed this, you're also a liability to them. Claire's heart stopped. What does that mean? It means we need to keep you safe. At least until we've dismantled the entire network. By the time Claire returned home, it was nearly midnight. Eleanor was asleep on the couch, covered with a blanket. The Christmas tree still blinked softly in the corner, its lights reflecting off the snow outside. Claire sat beside her mother, watching her sleep, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. Adrian Cole was alive, but in police custody now. The network was being investigated. Sophia Reynolds was still missing, but now there was hope that the police might find her. And Claire had discovered that the man she'd loved was capable of far more darkness than she'd ever imagined. She thought about the scar on his face in that photo. She wondered where it had come from. She wondered how many people had been hurt in his wake. She wondered if she would ever be able to trust anyone again. Outside, snow continued to fall, covering the world in white, pure, untouched, hopeful. But inside, Claire felt only the weight of betrayal, the shock of violence, and the fragile hope that somehow, this nightmare would finally end. The next morning, Silver Creek felt unnervingly still. Snow lay untouched across the streets, muffling the sounds of life and giving the town an eerie silence Claire had never noticed before. After the chaos at the Blue Pine Lodge, after the gunfire, after seeing Adrian dragged away in handcuffs, Claire thought she would feel safer. She didn't. She felt exposed. Like a door had been opened, and now the darkness on the other side was aware of her. At 7:42 a.m., her phone rang. Detective Marcello. Ms. Donovan, he said, voice taut, we found a location tied to the network. An old warehouse outside Lakewood Springs. We believe Adrian was supposed to meet his contacts there today. Claire's stomach tightened. Contacts, as in the men who tried to kill him? Possibly. These are dangerous individuals. We need to move quickly, before they destroy evidence. Claire gripped the side of the counter. What does this have to do with me? Everything, the detective said. Because Adrian finally decided to talk. Claire froze. He's naming names. Locations. Fake identities. And. He paused. He said you should be there. What? Why? Because the network knows who you are now. He believes you're safer with us than alone. Claire's breath came out shaky. She didn't want to see Adrian again. Not after everything. Not after discovering he was a predator. Not after the gunfire. Not after realizing that the man she'd loved was nothing but a carefully constructed lie. But Detective Marcello's words echoed in her mind, you're safer with us than alone. And there was something else, something she couldn't quite name. A need for closure. A need to hear the truth directly from Adrian's mouth. A need to understand how someone could hurt so many people and still claim to have loved her. I'll be there, Claire said quietly. The warehouse sat on the outskirts of Lakewood Springs, surrounded by dead fields and skeletal trees. It was a massive structure of corroded metal and broken windows, the kind of place that looked like it had been abandoned for decades. Police vehicles surrounded it, unmarked cars, tactical units, officers in protective gear. Detective Marcello met Claire at the perimeter, his expression grave. Stay close to me, he said. And don't touch anything. They entered through a side door. The interior was cavernous, filled with shadows and the smell of dust and rust. Overhead lights cast harsh illumination on rows of filing cabinets, computers, and stacks of documents. And in the center of it all, Adrian Cole, sitting at a metal table with his hands cuffed, flanked by two officers. When he saw Claire, his entire body went rigid. Claire, he breathed, as if her name was the only real thing left in the world. Detective Marcello guided her to a chair across from Adrian, keeping himself between them. Adrian has agreed to cooperate fully, the detective explained. In exchange for a reduced sentence, he's providing information about the entire network operation. Adrian's eyes never left Claire's face. I wanted to tell you, he said, his voice hoarse. I wanted to explain everything. Don't, Claire said flatly. Just tell Detective Marcello what he needs to know. Adrian flinched as if she'd struck him. But he began to talk. He described the network, a sophisticated operation spanning 7 states, run by a man named Viktor Sokolov. A Russian businessman with ties to organized crime. Adrian had been recruited 5 years ago, desperate for money after a failed business venture. They'd trained him, given him multiple identities, taught him how to manipulate women emotionally while extracting their financial resources. How many? Claire asked suddenly. Adrian looked at her. How many women? His jaw clenched. 47 confirmed. Possibly more. The number hit Claire like a physical blow. 47. 47 lives destroyed. 47 families shattered. And she was just one of them. Why, she whispered. Why did you do this? Adrian's eyes filled with tears. Because I was broken. Because I was angry. Because I told myself it didn't matter, that these were just numbers, just transactions. But then I met you, and you were so kind, so genuine, so real, and I realized what I'd become. A monster, Claire said quietly. Yes, Adrian agreed, his voice breaking. A monster. Detective Marcello leaned forward. Tell her about Sophia Reynolds. Adrian's face went pale. Sophia, she found out the truth. She came to confront me, threatening to go to the police. Victor's people grabbed her. They said if I talked, they'd kill her. Claire's heart stopped. Is she alive? I think so. They were keeping her at a location outside Denver. But I don't know if. We've already contacted authorities in Colorado, Detective Marcello interrupted. A rescue team is moving in now. He turned to one of the officers. Get me an update. The officer spoke into his radio. Minutes passed. Endless, agonizing minutes. Then the radio crackled to life. We have her. Sophia Reynolds is secure. Alive and unharmed. Claire felt tears streaming down her face. Sophia was alive. The missing woman was alive. Adrian closed his eyes, relief washing over his features. Thank God, he whispered. But Claire felt no relief. She felt only the weight of everything that had happened. The money. The lies. The betrayal. The violence. The fear. There's more, Adrian said, looking directly at Claire. Information about the money. We can recover most of it. The accounts are frozen now, but with cooperation from international authorities, victims should be able to recover approximately 60% of what was stolen. Claire's breath caught. 60%. That was nearly $19,000. Enough to save her house. Enough to get through the next year. Enough to breathe again. But the price had been too high. I'm sorry, Adrian said, and for the first time, Claire believed he meant it. I'm sorry for everything. For the lies. For the money. For making you believe in something that wasn't real. Claire stood up slowly. She looked at this man, this stranger wearing the face of someone she'd loved, and felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But the beginning of understanding. He was broken. He'd broken others. And now he would face the consequences. I hope you get help, she said quietly. Real help. Because what you did, what you are, that's not something you can just walk away from. Adrian nodded, tears streaming down his scarred face. I know. As Claire left the warehouse, stepping back into the cold winter air, Detective Marcello walked beside her. We've also recovered documentation about other members of the network, he said. Viktor Sokolov is being extradited from Russia. The entire operation is being dismantled. Claire nodded, but she barely heard him. Her mind was elsewhere, thinking about Sophia Reynolds, finally safe. Thinking about the other 46 victims who might recover their money. Thinking about the women Adrian would never hurt again. What happens to him? She asked. Adrian will face federal charges. Fraud, conspiracy, money laundering. Depending on his cooperation, he could face anywhere from 8 to 15 years. Claire nodded. Justice. Not perfect justice. But justice nonetheless. As she drove back to Silver Creek, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Snow fell gently, covering the world in white, a fresh start, a blank page, a promise of renewal. Claire thought about her father. She thought about what he'd always said, the world breaks everyone. But some people become stronger in the broken places. She was beginning to understand what he meant. 6 months later. The month of June had arrived in Silver Creek with a warm breeze and the promise that summer would soon settle over the mountains. Claire was in her classroom, observing her 5th-grade students working on creative writing assignments. Everything seemed normal, but nothing was like before. Life had changed in ways she never imagined. After Adrian Cole was arrested, the police investigation continued for months. They discovered that the network was far larger than initially suspected. Operating across 7 states, with more than 40 confirmed victims. But what mattered most to Claire, thanks to Adrian's cooperation and federal asset seizure, victims were able to recover approximately 60% of the stolen money. For Claire, that meant nearly $19,000, not everything, but enough to breathe again. With that money, she paid the overdue bills. She repaired the roof that had been leaking. She bought the medications Eleanor needed. And, most importantly, she recovered her peace of mind. The school also supported her in ways Claire would never forget. Principal Beatrice Hayes organized a collection among teachers and parents, raising nearly $2,000 additional dollars. You're part of this community, the principal had said, with a sincerity that touched Claire's heart deeply. But the greatest transformation wasn't financial. It was emotional. Miles, no, not Miles. His real name was Marcus. Marcus Williams had moved to Silver Creek. He'd gotten a transfer at the hospital where he worked. And now he spent almost every day with Claire. It wasn't a passionate, all-consuming romance, not like what she'd felt for Adrian, which she now recognized as an illusion well constructed. It was something deeper. More real. More solid. It was trust. And Claire had learned that trust was infinitely more valuable than passion. One afternoon in June, when Claire left school, Marcus was waiting outside with that smile that had become so familiar. He held a small bouquet of wildflowers, nothing fancy, but genuine. "Hey, beautiful," he said, kissing her forehead. "How was your day?" "Tiring, but good." The students really improved their writing skills. They walked together toward the house. Eleanor was on the porch, watering the plants that Marcus had helped her plant, a small garden that now bloomed with vibrant colors. Roses. Daisies. Sunflowers. Mija. "You're home," Eleanor said, with a smile. On that day, her lucidity was clear. "Marcus, would you like tea?" "Of course, Mrs. Donovan. You make the best tea in the city." While Eleanor retreated to the kitchen, Marcus held Claire's hand. I wanted to talk to you about something, he said, his tone shifting to something more serious. Claire's heart accelerated slightly. Everything okay? She asked, concerned. Marcus breathed deeply. Well. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I wanted to know if you'd be interested in. He opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant ring, white gold with a small diamond. If you'd want to marry me. Claire blinked, confused for a second. Then she understood. Marcus, are you proposing? I am. I know it's soon. I know you're still healing. But I wanted to be by your side while you rebuild your life. And he smiled gently. I wanted to do it officially. Claire looked at Marcus, then at the ring, then at the house where she'd grown up, at the tree her father had planted, at the garden now blooming with life. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I want to marry you. Marcus kissed her, and it was a different kiss from any other she'd received. Not passionate or urgent. It was a promise. It was a future. It was peace. Eleanor appeared in the doorway with 2 cups of tea in her hands and saw the ring on Claire's finger. Mija, are you getting married? She asked, tears filling her eyes. I am, Mom. I'm going to marry Marcus. The mother hugged them both, and for a moment, the pain that had marked the previous months seemed distant, almost unreal. 3 years later, Christmas again. Christmas had arrived in Silver Creek once more. But this time everything was different. Claire was in the kitchen of her new house, a larger home that she and Marcus had purchased together, preparing Christmas dinner. This time, there was abundance. Roasted ham. Sweet rice. Tamales. Crystallized fruits. Everything made with her own hands. Eleanor sat at the table, still lucid on that day, watching her daughter work. Mija, you look so happy, the elderly woman said, with a smile that seemed to come from a deep place within her. I am very happy, Mom. I'm very happy. Marcus entered through the kitchen door, carrying Sophia, their 2-year-old daughter. The little girl laughed as she reached toward the ceiling, delighted. Grandma! Grandma! Sophia squealed, pointing at Eleanor. The grandmother opened her arms, and Marcus placed the child in her lap. The love that overflowed in that moment was almost palpable. Claire observed the scene and felt something she'd lost long ago, peace. True peace. Not a peace that denied the suffering of the past. But a peace that had integrated it, transforming it into wisdom. Claire had learned that trusting was risky, but that not trusting was dying slowly. She had learned that Christmas wasn't about perfect gifts or perfect families. It was about being with people you love, even when everything falls apart. That night, while the family gathered around the table for dinner, Claire raised a glass. I'd like to make a toast, she said, her voice steady. 3 years ago, I thought my life had ended. I lost everything, money, trust, hope. But she looked at Marcus, at Sophia, at her mother. I gained so much more. I gained a real family. I gained love that isn't based on lies. I gained the opportunity to rebuild. And I gained the certainty that, no matter what happens, I'm strong enough to face it. Everyone raised their glasses. To Christmas, said Marcus, kissing Claire on the forehead. To the Christmas of Reconstruction. To the Christmas of Reconstruction, the others repeated. And while the Christmas tree flickered in the background, illuminating each face around the table, Claire understood that she had found the true meaning of that season. It wasn't about having everything perfect. It was about being with those you love, even when everything has been lost. Because Christmas, truly, was about rebirth. 6 months later. Federal authorities finally located and arrested the remaining members of the network. Viktor Sokolov, the Russian businessman who'd orchestrated the entire operation, was extradited and faced charges in multiple countries. Adrian Cole, who had cooperated fully with authorities, received a reduced sentence, 12 years in federal prison. But more importantly, other victims recovered their money. And Claire became an advocate for victims of emotional scams. She began giving lectures in schools about how to identify manipulative relationships. She began helping other women who had experienced similar situations. Because she knew, deeply, that suffering only has value if it's transformed into wisdom. And wisdom only has purpose if it's shared. And so, amid the pain, the losses, and the rediscoveries of herself, Claire discovered that Christmas isn't about perfection, but about rebirth. She discovered that trust, though fragile, is the most valuable thing we can offer. She discovered that after the darkest storm, there's always a sunrise. And she discovered that the true miracle of Christmas doesn't come in the form of gifts or promises. It comes in the form of people who choose to stay. People who choose to love. People who choose to rebuild. If this story touched your heart, remember to subscribe to the channel and share the video with someone special. Now tell me here in the comments, which part of this story moved you the most? Your opinion is what keeps this space alive and full of emotion. Thank you for listening until the end, and until the next story.